When I was younger, I would fully endorse anyone to get into video games because it was fun, it was affordable, and the games being made seemed like they were actually worth playing. These days, I don't see how games are meant for anyone besides people with real money. There's a lot to talk about here, firstly from Polygon. The best time to buy a video game console was 2 years ago. That statement unfortunately is true. The reasoning is because the cost of entry at this point, it's becoming ridiculous to keep up with. You see, the crux of Polygon's article here is on the Steam Deck. Valve's handheld gaming device has been a massive success for the company, to the point that other companies like Sony are currently trying to make their own rival versions to also cash in on handheld gaming. The problem now is that nobody can really afford these things anymore. As Polygon stated here, Valve has officially made the Steam Deck far more expensive going forward. The base model increased to $789 American. The 1TB model will now set you back $949 American. For my Canadian viewers, this means that the Steam Deck's 1TB model will now cost you $1,312 before taxes, which at that point, the Steam Deck is now more expensive than a PS5 console, a Switch 2, or even a PC depending on where you shop at. That's bad. The Steam Machine, which is Valve's competitor for the console space, as MSN.com reported here, the rumors are that the Steam Machine will exceed far past $1,000 American. So for Canadians, that's basically someone's rent at this point for a single handheld console. It's not really Valve's fault, and they're not the only ones who are price hiking things either. Nintendo, as you can see there, is also increasing the price of the Switch 2 come September 2026. So a console that will be well over a year old at that point and then some will now cost more now than it did during its release. All of this because of rising costs, and largely speaking, it makes me then ask an uncomfortable question, which is, how far is this really going to go? And more importantly, how can games, especially new players, enter this space with how high of an investment things are becoming? You see, when I was a kid, games were a lot cheaper. Even the consoles were too. You could snag an Xbox 360 for not even $300 in most places. Games were like $60 a pop new. Nintendo at the time had their games priced in the $40 range for the latest Pokemon games even. The Nintendo DS at the time was nowhere near 600 plus Canadian. It was more like 200 and something at best. Looking back at it now, we really didn't know how good we had it, did we? It does make me wonder about things though. If a reckoning is going to be coming, if this entire space is collapsing under its own weight with how dire these things are getting these days, as Polygon stated there, it's not just Valve, it's everybody. Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, you name it. Everything is more expensive now than ever. Just by consoles like the PS5 at this point being 6 whole years old now, yet the PS5 costs more now than it did during the pandemic, that's bleak, dude. Polygon does try to place the blame on the current president, and then they pivot saying that it's because of the rising cost of RAM, which I think the answer is everything and then some. It's also that the games that are getting made are also being hit or miss no matter really how you look at it too. This year, we've had plenty of bangers with more to come, but I mean still, you have stuff like Call of Duty Modern Warfare 4 that's on its way, which looks like an actual Call of Duty game again for once after Modern Warfare 3 looked more like a DLC pack. And Black Ops 7 was, well, whatever that game was trying to be. I still don't really know. There's the other problem with a lot of these huge games like a Modern Warfare 4 and then some too. They're not only expensive to buy, but they are really, really expensive to make too. Like budgets, man, those have only gotten bigger as time goes on. Black Ops 3 in 2015, if you didn't know, that had a budget of $450 million. The Modern Warfare reboot in 2019, it was $640 million to make that game. Black Ops Cold War in 2020 had an eye-watering budget of $700 million. That's the cost of both Infinity War and Endgame and then some combined for a single COD game. As GameFile reported here, Black Ops Cold War had 3 times the budget of The Last of Us Part 2, if you can believe that, and then some. It does kind of get to a point where you just have to ask, what's going on? Again, imagine you're a kid right now, 9 or so years old, okay? You're gonna have no money, right? I mean, you're a kid. You look at the games that you want. If mom and dad were to buy you, let's say, a PS5 to play, I don't know, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 4. Okay, you would need the console, the controller, which that's already expensive. Then the game is now $70 American, which that's whatever it is where you're from, I guess. And then you need online memberships unless you're on Steam, which if you're a kid on Steam, your computer then is probably gonna be pretty costly too if it wants to play the latest games, right? So all of this to play the latest games, and that's well over $1,000 investment to get a single kid into, say, one game that they want to play. And then the industry wonders, well, why isn't this stuff growing like it used to? Why aren't the profit margins going up? I mean, come on, it's simple. Nobody for the most part can afford these things. Yet companies that rely on these games selling, GameFile showed even the league sales numbers of the 3 Call of Duty games is seen here. Black Ops 3 back in the day sold 43 million copies at about $60 per copy before tax. It means that Black Ops 3 made somewhere in the $2.5 billion range. Obviously, they have to split that with platforms and such, but that's roughly what it made. You may also notice that Modern Warfare 2019 sold 41 million. Cold War sold 30 million. The numbers, yeah, they keep dropping because people aren't showing up the same way they used to. It did bump up for Black Ops 6, I know, but Black Ops 7, as we know, that was a low point too. So why aren't people buying these expensive games the way that they used to? A combination of being both too expensive and too frequent is the likely problem. Many people watching likely don't buy any games new anymore, and I really don't blame you. I mean, many people just kind of wait for the deep sales or for when the completed edition is done and cheaper too, which is not really what the industry wants you to wait for. But when every game is asking you to shelve out 70 plus, it's just kind of the reality. People just can't afford what the publishers want. And when the consoles are costing what they do, I mean, it's not their fault. You have too many things to pay for already. I mean, I know I do. And you expect everybody to then shelve out money for every release day one? It's not going to happen. Back in March, GameIndustry.biz interviewed John and Brenda Romero, who have been working in games since, well, forever. They said that the video game crash of the 80s is nothing compared to what we're seeing right now. This is what Brenda Romero said. I feel like the industry's in a really horrible place. I mean, we were there in the 80s for the crash, and this is definitely crashier. There were so few people that have not been affected, or their partners affected, or they're worried about being affected. It's a really difficult time right now. John Romero said, as you can see there, that even games like Battlefield 6, which did very well, is the best-selling game of last year, and the best in its series sales-wise too, that still had layoffs anyways, and he alongside everybody else was confused by how that can even happen. The other problem that balloons budgets besides marketing campaigns and the general increase of like every console and then some is, well, outsourcing. You see, a lot of games, well, most actually, they're all using outsourcing these days. The idea, in case you don't know what that is you may need assets made for your game or systems developed or maybe more art created, whatever it is. But it's all just work that your studio can't do because they just don't have the manpower to do it. So you outsource the work to another studio to work on it, right? Places like Singapore, for example, they're rife with studios that do plenty of outsourcing work already. That, however, when not managed correctly, can lead to, like I said, a lot of problems. Let's take Halo Studios and the recently announced Halo Campaign Evolved. That's a full remake of the first Halo games campaign meant to release on PS5 and everything else. And it turns out Halo Remake is also using outsourcing, but way more than most studios do these days. As WindowsCentral.com reported here, Halo Remake is practically being fully made in an outsourcing development pivot. So Mr. Rebs, a video game reporter, detailed just how much outsourcing is being done for the next Halo game, and here's what he said. A lot of outsourcing was used to create Campaign Evolved, even for core programming and design, so much so that it's not really an in-studio project. So fathom that, okay? Halo Combat Evolved is practically not even being made by Halo Studios. Instead, the whole thing is made out of house. How does that even happen? According to Windows Central, when it comes to the Halo Campaign Evolved project, Halo Studios, formerly 343 Industries, are taking on more of an overseer manager role when it comes to this remake. So that means they're not even making the game themselves anymore. Also, large swaths of this remake's level and technical design are also being done by a studio named Abstraction, which they're a support studio within another studio called Virtuous. If you don't know who that is, Virtuous and Abstraction, these are studios that worked heavily on the Oblivion remaster remake and the Metal Gear Solid 3 remake that came out too. Some of the changes, however, coming to Halo Combat Evolved or Campaign Evolved, whatever, include revisions, as they call it, to multiple parts of the game's campaign. One of the major redesigns will overhaul the infamous level, the library. They're apparently doing this to reduce the amount of repetition in that level. They're also planning to reduce repetition or pacing, as they call it, in other levels within Campaign Evolved, though there's no specifics given there. This Halo remake will also have stuff like sprinting now, that's gonna annoy hardcore Halo fans like myself, I bet. Because if you don't know, the original Halo game structure is specifically designed the way that it is to coincide with Marty O'Donnell's legendary soundtrack. By adding sprinting and what they also call expanded traversal, whatever that means, this will mean that Marty's music will now not hit the same in Halo's remake potentially, because the flow of gameplay and the set pieces can no longer be controlled like they used to now. Which, if you're a big Halo fan like I am, you know that's not a good thing. They will also apparently add a third-person view to this remake, so you can play the whole thing that way, which is odd, but there you go. There's also another change. And this is gonna annoy hardcore Halo fans for sure. They're apparently adding, and I'm not kidding, they're adding brutes to the missions within Campaign Evolved as well, even though the brutes, as we all know, do not show up once in the entirety of the original game. Because obviously they didn't exist yet since Bungie, made them for future games as enemies. They will also be adding some sort of campaign remix option too that will allow for alternate gameplay rules and skull modifiers, I guess, to make the campaign more replayable. That, to me, at least amongst all of this, that's like one of the only good additions. They're also going to be adding 9 guns that were not present in the original game from the Sentinel Beam, the Spiker, Battle Rifle, SMG, Energy Sword, and more. Again, all weapons that did not exist until Bungie developed them in the future games, by the way. So all of that's being added to the remake, and now we know the game is almost completely being made outside of Halo Studios, which is kind of wild to admit. Because then it makes you wonder then, well, what are the people at Halo Studios doing then with all their free time? Are they just making the next game? Or is Halo Studios just going to be a bunch of manager types who sit around drinking coffee, collecting a paycheck, while they just kind of oversee and outsource practically everything under the sun to just other studios to make now? Again, this is going to balloon the budget of Halo Remake, because before, games were, made in-house by the developers, obviously. If now we're just going to be outsourcing entire, maybe they think this will be cheaper in the long run. But the question then becomes, will it be better then? I'm not really sure. It's such a weird spot for everything to be in, isn't it? All these games are being outsourced and consoles somehow costing more years after release. You got industry veterans like John and Brenda Romero just admitting that, yeah, we're cooked. I mean, it doesn't instill confidence. What's also weird to me when it comes to Halo, at least, is that, well, when they made Halo 1, 2, and 3 and Reach and ODST, that was obviously made by the same Bungie studio, and every game got progressively better because the people at Bungie became masters of their craft. But if you're just going to be outsourcing everything under the sun for Halo Campaign Evolved or whatever you want to call it, then how can the people at Halo Studios get better at making Halo games if they're not really the ones that are making the Halo game in the first place? You know what I mean? So what are they going to do? Just outsource it every single time to a different studio to make every single remake if they're not really familiar, if you will, or I guess know-how and all that about how to make the Halo games to be like, it's such a weird design decision. The whole thing just comes off like it doesn't make a lot of sense, and it's just because they want to make it for cheaper, but not necessarily better, But what weird is too also is that the ex-art director of Halo, his name is Glenn Israel, so he flat out called for an investigation into Halo Studios recently too, and here's what he said. I allege that Halo Studios leadership has committed and continues to commit numerous unethical and unlawful acts to the detriment of the franchise, its developers, and the community that supports their projects. In my last 2 years there as art director, I personally witnessed or was subjected to these acts, duly reported them, and faced retaliation from both studio leadership and Microsoft HR. Players deserve to know the circumstances behind the decline of what was once the Xbox flagship franchise. Its developers need justice, and a certified third-party investigation is the only way to expose the objective truth. As of now, that's all that comes of Glenn's comments, but when your art director of almost 2 decades comes out saying that sort of allegation, yeah, it means that things are pretty much cooked behind the scenes. I mean, Microsoft, which owns Halo and stuff like Call of Duty, has also claimed from NME.com as seen here that they will not be pursuing BS celebrity collab skins in Call of Duty either going further. That these companies are now pivoting any which way that they can really do to make as much money as possible due to the dire circumstances of where, well, everything is heading right now. So the question then remains, are we in a video game crash? Yeah, we are. It may not seem like it in some ways, but all the telltale signs are still there. Not as many people are buying games. They're not supporting them as much or buying the slop, so to speak, like they used to. The goodwill of many companies are finally starting to erode, and it's really only the fault of the people at the top for allowing this to happen the way that it did. And no, you're not crazy to think that there's something very wrong that's going on here. I mean, games are more expensive. The hardware now is too. Development costs are out of control. The layoffs are just frequent. Studios are shutting down, and despite charging more than ever, it's less stable than it's ever been. That is the reckoning. We're paying more, but nothing is really getting better. And the further that this continues, the game industry is going to have a really uncomfortable realization that, yeah, they caused all this. Remember when a new game launched and people debated whether $60 back then was too much? Well, now that conversation honestly just feels almost quaint now. Today, we're looking at stuff like premium editions, deluxe editions, early access bundles, season passes, battle passes, cosmetic stores, subscription services, and increasingly higher base prices than ever before. Publishers did try to gaslight us, saying that the price must go up due to these development costs, but what I think a lot of people are realizing is if games are going to be more expensive than ever, why does it feel like we're then getting less value then? Why are the launches broken? Why do updates take longer than ever? I think people would be okay to spend more if it meant for sure that the quality was going to get better, but instead it just seems like we're losing more and gaining less. That's a really dangerous combination. That's why I started this whole thing with the handheld game gaming thing, right? Because that part of games is meant to be cheaper on purpose. You're not getting a whole console per se in the palm of your hand power-wise. There's a reason for that, right? Yet now the weaker hardware costs just as much, if not more, than the more powerful hardware. So tell me, what's the point of that? Like, handheld gaming for a lot of people, that was their avenue into video games because, again, it was budgeted for a reason. But if the budgeted alternative is now considered a luxury purchase now, it kind of just goes against the whole concept then, doesn't it? A handheld gaming device is supposed to make gaming more accessible. Now you can only have that access if you aren't like one paycheck away from it all falling apart. The market risks are then becoming trapped in this endless race towards this premium pricing that just can't exist. And eventually the consumers are going to start opting out entirely, which, yeah, I totally understand why you would do that. Because there is a limit to how much people are willing to spend these days, and I really don't blame them. You ask me, the modern, I guess, AAA formula, it's beginning to show some cracks in the armor. If outsourcing, which is meant to be cheaper, is just costing just as much, and your team is not having the same amount of talent or I guess experience because of it, what are we doing? It's as if every AAA release is like a life or forfeit situation pretty much these days, because in many cases, it's actually just that. The problem isn't simply that games are expensive. They are, but the problem is that the business model that these types keep using has become dependent on blockbuster level performance, which is, well, not really guaranteed anymore. It's not like nothing is being made with sustainability in mind. It's like everyone's just betting on everything becoming a big hit or nothing these days. And this is why the same cycle keeps repeating, right? Layoffs, closures, restructure, cost cutting, you name it. This is why people are walking away, because they were told that things were going to get more expensive, so they expected better quality and polish if they had to pay that price. But most of the time, it's just not the case. That's what many companies still struggle to understand these days. The audience isn't obligated to support unsustainable business models. The audience is not responsible for fixing the bloated budgets. If you ask me, the audience is not even really required to subsidize these bad decisions that are made by the people at the top. We just want good games at reasonable prices, delivered in a finished state. I'm looking at you, Starfield on PS5, and none of this should be controversial, yet it is. The biggest threat facing games and those who make them today, it's not the technology or even the competition. It's the disconnect between what companies want and what players are expecting. It's like, even though they know that, these companies are fast tracking their own apocalypse because they can't see any other way out of this. And it's sad to me because gaming should be entering a golden age right now, right? Technology is better than ever. The development tools are way more accessible than ever, really, to make games, especially with tutorials on YouTube and then some. The audience even, it's as big as it's ever been, yet despite that, the same cycle keeps happening. Something really has to give here, because this industry cannot endlessly raise these costs while simultaneously losing consumer confidence. It just can't work like that. Eventually, reality catches up, and it will. And again, remember, take all that I just said and look at it through the eyes of yourself when you were a little kid. If you were 9 or 10 years old right now in this instance, and you wanted to get into games, whatever platform, it doesn't matter. Do you honestly think that you could make that happen given what we know today about the cost and then some of games? I honestly think, and I'm being serious, if I was a kid right now, I couldn't even be a fan of games even if I wanted to, because the cost alone would have priced me out of the hobby well before any of it had a meaningful impact on me. And that's sad to say, man, because if the newer generations are getting priced out, they can't play these games or become the fans that will keep these things alive in the future, right, when they get older. But really, whose fault is that? Is it ours or the people who control the prices? Well, I think we both know the answer. Things can get better. I have to believe that they can. Otherwise, like the Romero said, this might not be the last crash that we see. Either way, I want you to know that you're not at fault here. If the industry refuses to meet us halfway, all the people can really do is keep walking away until they're heard. As always, though, thanks for watching and see you next time.